I want you to talk a little bit about yourself. You've spoken about this tussle between, the court and the judicial, sort of the executive being constant. Look at your own case. The collegium, which is under debate today, has cleared you to become a judge since 2017, 4 times. And every time, it is the center that has actually declined to move that ahead, right? How does the collegium system work if the collegium has recommended this, in your case, multiple times, and the center is able to push back?
Well, the center is doing what the courts were doing, right? By not deciding, you are deciding in a manner. So those judgments and issues that I mentioned earlier, the electoral bonds, etc., by not deciding, you're effectively permitting the government to go ahead. And the same thing here. Theoretically, it is a collegium system at play. It's working. It's just that by simply sitting on a file, you have effectively exercised a pocket veto. Right? Now, that was never the intention of the decision of the setting up of the collegium system, but that's how it's being operated. And just one minor correction: yes, the collegium has not recommended my name 4 times. They've written to the government 4 times saying what is the material against me, and that has not been forthcoming. I hope, because there is nothing. I think I'm reasonably a safe guy. But this is just an instance of constitutional functionaries, which the government is, feeling that you may not like a judgment, but you have to adhere to the spirit of that judgment, right? You can't start giving your own spin and saying, I will now subvert a particular decision because I do not agree with it. That is absolutely antithetical and destructive of the rule of law. Good, bad, indifferent, you've got to do it. And it's for the collegium to consider as to how to ensure that that actually happens.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a lawyer, but the collegium, as I understand it, has the final word on who will be a judge, right? The center can sit on the file, as they have in your case. The center can object, as they have in your case, to your partner being of a foreign nationality. But ultimately, please correct me, who do you hold responsible for the fact that today, as an openly gay lawyer, you're not a judge? Is it the center or is it the collegium?
I think it's both of the above. The Supreme Court took its own sweet time to clear my name because the system is a 2-tier recommendation. The High Court recommends it, the Supreme Court clears it, then it goes to the government. If the government says no, it sends it back to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court reiterates the name after the government's rejection, the government has no option but to appoint. So that is the constitutional scheme after the judgment of the collegium system. So firstly, I'd say that the Supreme Court took its own time to clear my name, almost 3.5 years. So to say that it is the government alone to blame would be a bit disingenuous, because if the courts can take 3.5 years to finally consider the name, then the government has merely taken 1, right? But of course, this should not be a race to the bottom. Right?
Yeah.
What is the point of saying that they took 3 years, so we'll also take 3 years? That is not how systems should work. And that brings me to a real problem, I think, is while in other matters there should be friction, in judicial issues, there should be friction between the government and the courts. But in matters of appointment of judges and in administrative matters, this friction is entirely unnecessary and in fact destructive of the rule of law. So I think there is that problem, that the insufficient coordination and communication between the 2 organs of the state, namely the courts and the executive. So that's the problem.
As someone who actually was part of the legal team that must be credited with the decriminalization of homosexuality, with the reading down of 377, for you to be openly gay and have that be used, whether by the delays in the collegium system or by the center sitting on that file, as a way to actually professionally obstruct you, and the reason they've cited is that your partner is not Indian. One of the things you've said is that if you were not gay, your having a foreign partner would be viewed as through a different lens. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, that's quite clear. You see, if I were a straight person and I had a foreign wife, I could get married to her, and my wife would have a PIO or an OCI card now, right? So she would be an overseas citizen of India and therefore amenable to the entire gamut of laws that exist in India. Since this country does not recognize marriage equality, I can therefore not get married to my partner, and therefore he, even though he desperately would love to, cannot become an OCI. He cannot become an overseas citizen of India. So then to hold that against me, that look, your partner is a foreign citizen, but you're not allowing him to become a citizen in any case, right? Because we are gay. And that is obviously a case of hostile discrimination. A person who is straight will not have that problem. A person who is gay does have that problem. So this is one indirect manner in which I say that my candidature is not being considered because of my sexuality, whatever the other reason may be. This is staring you in the face, right? I would not be the first person ever to have public office with a foreign spouse. The foreign minister has it. We had many instances of judges of the High Court, chief justices. Justice Vivian Bose, one of the greatest judges this country has ever produced, of the Supreme Court, had an English wife. There was no problem because they were married. And unfortunately, that is not the case for a queer person. We cannot get married, and therefore my partner cannot be an overseas citizen of India, cannot have an OCI card, and that is held against us. Now that is, you know, absolute.
Are you angry? Are you upset? It's been a few years, and thank you for that correction. The Collegium does recommend, and it writes to the government. I just want to underline that correction,
Yeah.
4 times. But you point out that the courts also took 3.5 years to get to that point. Now the centre's taken a little over a year, and the file hasn't moved. You were part of that team. I just want to bring up that photograph again. It's a kind of iconic photograph with Medika Guruswamy, Saurabh Kripal. Can we just pull up that picture on the lawns of the court? I just want our audience to have a look. This is the team that actually decriminalized or fought to decriminalize homosexuality, and much is owed to this team. You're one of that iconic team, and then you, as a gay person, are obstructed after this decriminalization, right? I want to ask you: does this make you angry, sad? Have you given up? Like, have you turned your back on the dreams of becoming a judge? Where are you today, finally, Saurabh?
Well, look, when the battle for decriminalization was being fought in 2018, the judgment came. We had a judgment against us in 2013. So we are used to fighting battles. As a queer person, from the day you are born and you discover your sexuality, you're fighting battles, right? So I think I have a pretty thick skin. I've been fighting for the last 50 years, Barkha. I'm not one to back down. I don't get sad. I understand why people are the way they are. Part of the requirement that I say that I must have empathy also makes me understand why people are against equality. It's because they don't truly understand what it means to be a queer person. They don't have queer friends. They don't know anything. So it's my job to educate as well. And if I start getting angry, I will not be doing justice to forget myself, but to that community that I hope to fight for. So I'm not angry. I'm not sad. I certainly am not giving up. I'm in it for the long haul.